Hello, we're here with His Excellency Bishop Pablo David from San Fernando in the Philippines. He just traveled, I believe he said 16 hours.
16 hours.
16 hours to get
Via
here.
Hong Kong.
And made it just in time to give a really, really excellent lecture that I highly recommend everyone check out. I was telling you before we started rolling, what I found particularly good about your talk today is that it had very specific examples from Scripture where you pointed out some interfaith encounters from your tradition, Christianity, to really address the problem in a positive way. At this conference, we've been hearing a lot of wonderful things, but they've all been very high level. We can all get along, not as specific. So I was very happy to hear that. And where do you think things tend to maybe get lost, where people move away from this, talking specifically from their tradition about how to get along, and maybe, I don't know, where do you think the good intentions get lost in this whole struggle?
Well, you see, if only we can take seriously the sources of our own religions, of our own faith communities, I think it will be a lot easier for us to see eye to eye with each other. Right within the Bible, you're uniting the Jewish faith communities, the Christians, the Protestants, the Greek Orthodox, and there are many texts in the Bible that coincide also with the Quran, and so the talking points can be drawn. The talking points for interfaith and intercultural dialogues can be drawn from the scriptures, which are respected by most faith communities in spite of our differences.
Yeah, you mentioned the example of Gandhi's quote about liking Christ, but that Christians don't have to act like him. I also, my own experience attending religious gatherings is that they tend to be very positive and loving in very different ways. But I also see a lot of fundamentalism. We were discussing that earlier too, where people use the same sort of text to point out a group and really ostracize and blame, and we see that all over the world in different countries. I was just in Africa. We're seeing the church do that a lot with homosexuals, and it's a Christian thing there, but they make it an African thing. When I encounter people like that, I just want to sort of remind them, aren't you supposed to be loving and embrace people? But I found that when you try to tell someone who's an educated man or woman of faith about their own religion, that conversation doesn't really go very well. They don't, I'm not.
We call it a conversation stopper.
Yeah. So, in trying to be diplomatic and handle these sort of encounters where I come across an idea that I don't really need to change their mind, I just want to say, can't we approach the way you feel in a loving way, not a hateful way? How would you handle that conversation?
I think you're right about that. I don't know if it's really just changing minds, but it's more really about changing attitudes, because I think fundamentalism exists in any kind of religion. When we talk about fundamentalism, it's unfortunate that many times, or extremism, people immediately think of Islamic extremism and fundamentalism. But there is also Christian fundamentalism and extremism. And there would be, manifestations of fundamentalism not only in religions but also in political ideologies. It is an attitude. In fact, I call it an aberration, a disease. And it is hard to argue with people when they proceed from basically a fundamentalist attitude. That needs to be healed, And usually, fundamentalism is an attitude that is fueled by a trauma. And I do understand people who tend to become fundamentalistic. Sometimes they've been traumatized. And people who have been victims of violence have a tendency to become extremists, and to desire revenge. And I would understand where they're coming from, You're right about, the basic, talking point is really love. Well, the lady said not just love, but unconditional love. Nobody has a monopoly of that. Once you speak on that level, then you're cutting across different religions. And if Christianity itself is saying that God is love, then the most important manifestation of being godly is not about being, knowledgeable in your doctrine, but about being loving. Loving in the unconditional sense of the term. And since any person around the world is capable of that, then that means we can talk to each other. We can unite ourselves. We can see eye to eye on that level.
Yeah. I think once you reach that point where you're able to share stories from your faith or my perception of faith, if I don't have faith, things go well, but it's reaching that level of sitting down
Yeah.
and sharing with each other that I don't know, it's a hard wall to get through, and
Right.
what we're trying to learn how to do better at the Institute of Cultural Diplomacy is how to use culture and diplomacy to maybe reach that stage. So
Yeah.
any thoughts about when you encounter fundamentalists to how to help get them to that point where they're going to sit down and have that conversation?
Yes, yes. Well, it's already a big breakthrough if you get them to sit down, you know.
Yeah, that's the challenge.
And to join you in a conference, that's already a big breakthrough. But you see, we have to begin by understanding where people are coming from. Well, even in Christianity, Jesus says, love your enemy, do good to those who hate you, and pray for those who persecute you. Don't begin to think that they're ill-willed. It's very uncommon that people have ill will. You have to presuppose that people are sincere even when they are wrong. And sometimes they're just hurt. You have to begin to see every fellow human being as a fellow sufferer. People are suffering in one way or another. Once you begin to see them from that perspective, then that opens up compassion. And that makes exchanges possible, a dialogue possible. Without that, I don't think we can even go into the first base of dialogue.
Could you tell us maybe a little bit more about the role of the church and your work in the Philippines and what being a bishop in the Philippines is like, and maybe how that's different than in Europe?
Oh, well, how that is different from Europe, I do not know if I am the authority for that, but for the Philippines, I can safely say that we are dealing with interfaith and inter-Christian dialogues all the time. In the Philippines, even if majority of the Filipinos are Christians, there is also a wide diversity of Christian traditions in the Philippines. The biggest is, of course, Roman Catholic, but the mainstream Protestants are there also. A huge constituency of Pentecostalists and, new movements in the Philippines, Christian movements as well. And we have to reach out to them as well. And I think we are succeeding in that. We call it ecumenism, and that's part of the tradition of the Second Vatican Council already. We owe a lot to Vatican II. I think Vatican II opened the walls and the windows of the church and allow fresh winds to breathe into the church. That we're fast becoming tombs. We're lucky that in the last few years the teachings of the recent pontiffs have been really very edifying in terms of interfaith and intercultural dialogues. You heard Pope Francis quoted a while ago. He's been reaching out tremendously. Pope Benedict was like that also, although he has been misunderstood about certain views. But I think in general, the popes have been consistent with their names. Did you know that the title of the pope is Pontifex Maximus? I saw a restaurant, they call it a pontifical restaurant, nearby, maybe suggesting that this is the restaurant where the popes have eaten, something like that, But I wonder if they know that the word pontifex, which is Latin, means a bridge builder. So Pontifex Maximus means the greatest bridge builder. So how do you rate the effectiveness of a pope? Well, I would say he's only effective if he is able to build bridges, not walls. And I think more and more the present popes are becoming more conscious of that. I am hopeful for Roman Catholic Christianity. I'm hopeful for the interchange between Christians, and I'm hopeful that in the future there would be greater opportunities, for exchanges with other faiths as well. Like it's already happening here, right here. I'm really happy for you guys because you're very young people, and I see, that like you're led by someone like Mark Donfried, who's, only in his 30s. How old is Mark Donfried?
No comment.
I don't know.
I said, very young. I said, well, this is a group of young people. And, I said, I'm mighty proud of what you are doing. And I hope you carry it on, and that you're able to bring people together. I hope you take the suggestion that was raised a while ago by that lady, to organize something for children as well. Or for young people, aged 18 above and 18 below as well. I don't know if that's possible for you guys.
You mentioned also we all, no matter what our faith, we're all suffering together.
Yes.
And so I was wondering if you can tell us about your experience maybe with the recent typhoon, and how, if there were examples maybe of interfaith
Yes.
people stepping up to
Yes.
help one another.
Yes.
And during that time, because I know that was a time of great
Yes.
suffering, and
Yes.
an opportunity for a lot of people to instrumentalize religion for one way or the other.
Yes,
And
right.
even where I come from, natural disasters are sometimes, fundamentalists will say natural disasters are God's punishment for one thing or another, and these are things that are said. But there are also people who step up and
Yeah.
show their
Yeah.
immense amount of love
Yes.
for humanity. So
Yes, yes. They call us the disaster capital of the world. But I remember when the typhoon Haiyan, destroyed the southern part, the central region of the Philippines. There were media people who came to the Philippines and did their own reportage about what happened there. And there was this particular reporter who was saying, in spite of the devastation, I have seen only smiling faces, he said. I cannot understand that for the life of me. He said, that why Filipinos, do not look depressed, And when you show what happened, it's really very depressing. But I think that's what we are as a people. We are very resilient people. And it's not like it's the first time that we're facing a disaster. Of course, of this kind of magnitude, really, this is probably the worst that ever happened. Not only the Philippines, but all over the world, the worst typhoon that there ever has been, they said, But after the typhoon, when we saw people in solidarity with each other, locally, right within the Philippines, the situation of disaster uniting the most unlikely people, Muslims and Christians coming together, Christians of different denominations coming together and helping out. We're not even in good terms with China now, because of territorial disputes.
Mm-hmm.
But in spite of our differences with China reached out also and helped out. It's like during times of disaster and calamities, like you forget that you're enemies. And so you're almost tempted to say, God bless the Philippines for these disasters. It's like you think of them as a curse, but they're in many ways also a blessing to us. An opportunity to bring out the best in us, the best in humankind. I am, of that kind of perspective, that adversities really are opportunities. Crises are opportunities. And I think God did not create all people to be perfect so that we would learn how to be compassionate also. That I think there are people who are weak, people who are with disabilities, people who are in the margins of society, so that precisely we will learn to respond with compassion instead of competition. One of the curses is competition, the competitive spirit, and that's always the vocabulary of power. But when you are face to face with people who are weak and suffering, I think what is most humane in us is drawn out, and then humanity sees itself growing. It's like it's raising the bar of our human dignity.
thank you so much. Did you have any other questions?
Maybe as a final thought, you mentioned the pontiff being a build bridge,
Yes.
or bridge builder,
yeah.
not a wall builder. And you used the metaphor of the Berlin Wall and the symbol
Yeah.
of breaking through that for the interfaith dialogue comparison. What's to you? What's a big symbol of a wall between faiths that you think we can take apart maybe in our lifetime? What do you have one that really sticks out?
Um, I don't know, but I, um, I am drawing from the Christian sources. And because I draw from the Judeo-Christian sources, one of the most important images for me is Passover.
Mm-hmm.
And it is Jewish, and it is also Christian. And Passover means crossing over barriers. You remember, the Israelite people had to cross over the Red Sea. They had to cross over the desert. They had to keep crossing over from slavery into freedom. And now in Christian tradition, the basic barrier is called the barrier of sin, the barrier of death. And we have to cross over this barrier. I don't know if you're familiar with the song of Paul Simon, like a bridge over troubled waters, I will lay me down.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I think of that song as a song of Jesus. That Jesus is somehow saying, like a bridge over troubled waters, I will lay me down. Because when the waters are troubled, it's so difficult to cross over, especially when there is no bridge. Now, if I need to lay me down to be the bridge, I will make that possible so that you can cross over to the other side, and the other side to this side.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us here today.